So yeah, anabolic cycles for a natty. Um, Tongue in cheek, but there's you'll get what I'm getting at here. And it sort of mimics gear users in a sense. Um, and this is powerlifting specific. It can be applied elsewhere, I'm sure. And given that most of the best powerlifters are on gear, there's still going to be things we can take from them as naturals in regards to our training because good powerlifters are good powerlifters. That said, we can't do everything the same way they do. Certainly, gear has its qualities to it that we will not reap benefits from. But as far as natty anabolic cycling goes, this is something that I kind of just intuitively happened the first time I did it. But I noticed it retroactively in retrospect. And I've employed it again since then. And what it is basically is, as a natural, your main two ways to be anabolic are being in a caloric surplus and sleeping. So, have your sleep schedule on point always. But you can only really build muscle when you're in a caloric surplus. So, along with the muscle building that comes with that, you have much more energy in the gym and things like that from the extra calories. So, the way I kind of do this, let's start at the end of a meet and work our way back to a meet. So, you just finished the meet. You're done. I'm done. This is my experience, so let's talk about me. I'm fat because I ate into my meat. It's what I do. So the first thing I do, the first part of this cycling, if you will, is I cut weight. So I immediately go from being in this big caloric surplus to going to a caloric deficit with no maintenance in between. I don't maintain first or anything like that. I just go straight to cutting. Again, I'm not recommending this. I'm not telling you should do this. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm just telling you what I do. You can take it for what it is and do whatever you want with this information. So I cut. Go straight to cutting weight. Came out of a caloric surplus. Go straight to cutting weight. This would be, coming off gear for a steroid user. So they'd be doing their PCT or whatever. I go to cutting weight. Now, obviously it's calories in, calories out. So my calories are reduced. I eat much cleaner when I'm cutting weight. 90% of what I eat, if not more, is, whole nutritious foods during this phase. You want to get the best bang for your buck. While you're in a caloric surplus, eat good whole foods. You'll get in more volume that way. You'll be less hungry. You'll be providing your body with more nutrients, as your body's going, what the fuck, dude? Why are we losing all this weight? Man, we were just, eating 7,000 calories a day, and now we're down to 3,000 calories. Man, fuck you, dude. But yeah, feed it good, fruits, vegetables, lean meats, goes without saying. But yeah, and out training during this phase, which is what I'm doing now, which unfortunately I've got a little bit of an injury I'm dealing with, but training during this phase is working on like your absolute weakest weak points. And this is also a time if you want to introduce a variation you've never done before, things like that, things you can get better at while not necessarily needing to build muscle. And along with targeting, working on weaknesses that'll help you, when you, take the next step in the cycle, it keeps it interesting and keeps you mentally engaged because you can be getting better at something. If you bench 550 pounds, when you're 315 pounds, when you start cutting weight, you're not going to be able to push that bench up to 565 pounds. It's not going to happen. So instead of, pounding your head into a wall, trying to get stronger at your most elitist of elite lifts, that you were in a huge caloric surplus to hit, Work on stuff that you're weak at, that you're bad at, stuff you've never done before. I'm doing double overhead deadlifts right now. I'm still progressing on my closed grip Larson presses, and they were still a relatively new variation there for me, even at the end. And obviously, like I said, my knee is hindering things, so I got to take different routes there. But it's a time to work on new things and or very, very, very weak points. If you're not very efficient with your opposite stance deadlift, if you pull sumo normally, pull conventional while you're cutting, pull conventional, pull sumo, etc. If you've never really done front squats or like high bars, or if you do high bar and you never really work on low bars, now would be a good time to work on low bar, things like that. Things you don't do, you haven't done, and things that you're really, really weak at. This is the time for that while you're cutting. While you're mirroring the steroid users' PCT phase after they come off their blast, you come off your blast of calories. So phase 2 is when you return to maintenance. So this would be, if we're still comparing to gear users, their cruise dose. Now your body, you've evened out, you're on a cruise dose of calories, if you will, you're maintaining. Now is when you can start working back at what your end goals are for the meet that you're going to go into. This is where you can do variations that are closer to the main lifts. Maybe they are variations you're good at, that you've done before, that have helped you before. This is like when I typically like to do my front squats. Things of that. I like to do my Larson presses in this phase 2, when I'm maintaining, cruising, work on getting your volume up, your work capacity on your main lifts. This is a good time to reintroduce like 5x10s and 5x5s, things like that. And you'll want to start, some of your close variations. Maybe you hit a front squat PR. You'd been working on that opposite stance deadlift. You start PRing on that. You start to see volume PRs, as you work your way towards the end of this phase. You can see yourself getting better again, and then, you start to see that light at the end of the tunnel. If this is your first time going from a cut to maintenance to bulk, you can really see the process start to work as your lifts come around. So then we get to the last and final phase, phase 3, the blast, where the gear users up the dose, if you will. We up the dose of calories. This is where, you're ending your volume PRs. You might start, before you end that phase with your volume and really get some volume PRs, and then you start to go into your meet prep phase, with the added calories, the added energy, the added muscle you've been building. Now you're going to display that muscle, display that added power. You're going to have loads of energy to do so. You're still going to be building muscle and putting on muscle as the weights get heavier. The one thing I would say in this part of it, just to be leery of, is your leverage changes as you get bigger, depending upon how much of a caloric surplus you're in, how much bigger you're going to get. Your leverages can start changing. Typically for the better. Squats and bench press, it's usually not an issue. Your deadlifts, depending upon the old arm length, how puffy your sausage fingers get, getting into position on deadlifts may or may not become an issue. For most of you, it probably won't. But yeah, this is, now you're taking everything you've built, and you're getting ready to hit those 1 rep maxes. If you're training in the gym, or if you're a power lifter, you're gonna put it out there, on the platform. and this is the most fun part, obviously. And again, I will say with the food throughout the duration of this, you really should be eating as much whole food as, nutritious food as you can. That should go without saying. Even in this last part where you're blasting the calories, you still want to get most of them from whole food. And I know appetites can be a limiting factor for some people. Don't be afraid to, go for the ice cream and chocolate milk and things like that. Uh, you got to get a little dirty. You got to get a little dirty for the added calories, because the calories are what we're going for here. But the main bulk of your meals should still be those fruits and vegetables and potatoes and meats. And it's something I'd even suggest before looking the ice cream and cake route and Pop-Tarts and stuff, like switch from lean meats to fattier meats, go from sirloin to ribeye. Or for you poor fucks like me, go from 90-10 ground sirloin or ground beef to like 80-20 to 73-27, things like that. There's, sunflower seeds, etc. There's, whole foods that are calorically dense as well. But this should be the most fun part. If you enjoy powerlifting, like I do, hitting big 1 rep max PRs and stuff is the fun part. Competing is the fun part. Eating is the fun part. And that's, how you'll end the cycles, if you will, with blasting the calories. Now, you finished your meat and it's time to cut again. Typically, I don't start cutting the day after the meet. I'll take a week after the meet. I take the week off from training completely, and that week I will eat like complete dog shit because I know I'm cutting. And I will, Chinese buffet multiple times that week, not give a fuck, pizzas, etc., etc. That is the 1 week, just everything's out the window. And then, go immediately to cutting after that. But again, guys, this is how I've done things. And it does kind of mimic gear users in a sense. And why wouldn't it? Because anabolic is anabolic. Obviously, there's differences between getting yourself in a state of anabolism, naturally, versus using chemicals to do so. So I'm not saying they're one and the same, but I'm saying there is definitely some similarities there. And again, this is just something that I employ. Take the information for it as you will. Obviously, if you're in the heavier weight classes or even the one with the letters, it's certainly a more easy technique to use. Because you're not limited by X amount of weight. However, if you are in a lighter weight class, it could still be feasible. If you compete at 242, you could, after your meet, you could diet down to, 225 and maintain a little bit from there and then grow back into your class. So it's certainly viable elsewhere, too. It's just, not telling anybody to do it. I'm not saying you should do it. I'm not saying it's the best way to do it. I'm saying this is what I do. Take the information for what it is. And if you feel like it's applicable to you, there it is.